All right, so we have participants already on time. Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to wait for a few minutes, a minute or so that everyone joins in, and then we can quickly get started with the session. Perfect. So participants who've already joined, once again, thank you so much for joining us right on time. And I am Shubhada Lokre. I just want to understand from you if I'm clearly visible and audible, just like a yes or a no in the chat will work. So just let me know in the chat. Okay, so the chat was disabled. Now y'all can post in the chat. Great. So we have yes from Dheeraj, we have yes from Sundar. Okay, great. So I think, all right, great. Everybody has replied and great. So I'm just liking the enthusiasm today. Meanwhile, participants, y'all can also let us know in the chat in terms of what background are you coming from, and what is it that you're expecting from the session today. I still have a minute. I'm going to wait for a minute more because I still see participants who are joining. The number is increasing, so I don't want to start immediately. So y'all can just let me know in the chat what background you come from and what is it that you're expecting from the session. So we get better understanding and we can customize the session accordingly. All right, nobody has responded as of now to this question. Okay, so Nitish asking what is the question? So the question is basically what background are you coming from and what is it that you're expecting from today's session? That's the question. All right, so it's 7:02. So yeah, without any further ado, I'm just going to get started with the session quickly. So once again, a very warm welcome to all our participants. I am Shubhada Lokre and I'm a program manager at Upgrad. So today we are going to have a very interesting session. I will definitely let you all know about what we will be learning in the session. But before that, if participants, if you have any questions related to the program that we offer at Upgrad, or anything related to product management as a domain, or how you can crack interviews, this is the right forum where you can get all your questions answered. So make sure that you are like being attentive, make sure that you're asking your questions, because we have Ram, who comes with a very great experience in the product industry. He will definitely give talk about his journey. But yeah, let me tell you all, he is presently working as a group product manager at Flipkart with more than 10 plus years of experience as of now. So he is the person who will be able to answer your questions. He comes with great domain expertise and you can consider him as a veteran in the product industry. Okay, so make sure that you're asking your questions and getting them clarified from Ram directly, because we will have a live Q&A towards the end of the session. I also see a lot of participants are saying, that they're looking to work in PM role, looking for transition, and want insights about product management, are entrepreneurs and want to get into product management. So yeah, I think these are the type of questions, and this is exactly what we're here to address. We will talk about, today's session is all about how you can crack PM interviews at top companies, at digital companies. Okay, so every company has their own interview process. Okay, so that is what we will be discussing today. We will talk about what product management is and how you can crack interviews, because it's very important that you have, for example, you have learned the skills and everything, but getting that first job or cracking that first interview is very important, and it's also a little difficult at times. Okay, so what will help you to nail that first interview is what we will be teaching you today in this session. Okay, first interview or any interview related to product management. Okay, so that is what we will be talking about today, about in today's session. It's going to be very interesting, so take your notes and keep asking your questions. There's also Q&A that you will see. I already see one question. Audio enable or only chat? Can you not hear me or stuff? Only chat. For participants, y'all can only chat. Y'all can just post your questions in the Q&A. If you have any concerns or anything, you can use the chat option. But make sure that you're not using chat, for questions, because I will be picking up all the questions from the Q&A. And in the chat, the questions might get lost. Okay. So that was one thing. Before I proceed, I'll just make a poll live. So this is a poll that says we would like to know you more. So yeah, basically we want to know you more in terms of what background are you coming from, and what is it that you're expecting from today's session, so that we can modify and customize the delivery of the session accordingly, right? So if there are more freshers, we can talk on those lines. Okay. So yeah, that way we will modify and we will customize the delivery. So important that you all participate in this poll, because we want to basically understand what are your pain points, what are your concerns, and what exactly are you looking in this 1 hour, so we can help you better. Okay, great. So I see 4% participation. What I'm going to do is I'm going to keep the poll live for a while. And yeah, I think this is what I have in terms of the introduction about the session. And have any questions, please keep posting. The Q&A is active, and we will start taking the questions the last 15-20 minutes. We will end the session at 8, so make sure that you're posting your questions as well. Last 15 minutes will be the Q&A. Also, there are a few participants who say that they have to, like, they want to enroll into the program. So participants, even you guys, if you have any questions related to the program or upgrade, I would be the person to answer those questions. So keep asking those kind of questions as well. Great, 76% participation. I'm just going to wait for 5 seconds more, and I'm going to end it. I'm at least expecting 90% participation. But yeah, nonetheless. Okay, so I'm just going to end the poll now, and I will be sharing analysis with Ram. Yeah, so Ram, is the result visible on your screen?
Yes, Subhadra, I can see it.
Perfect. 1 minute. Yeah. So educational background, majority of the participants, are graduates and postgraduates. Are you from product background? 82% participants are not from the product background, and I think that is what the the session is going to be. So yeah, stay put, guys. This will be very informative. There are a few people who also come from the product background, which means they probably want to switch into a digital company as a product manager. Work experience, we have like all sort of work experiences, but majority is 6 to 10 years of experience. That is great. So we have all kind of participants with varied work experience. Outcome is to majorly transition into product roles. Also want a crisp roadmap to crack PM interviews, understand how I can crack product interviews at digital companies. Motivation is to enroll into the program and hear from the speaker. So I've taken 8 minutes, Ram. I hope this gives you some context. I would be here moderating the session. Over to you now.
Sir, thanks, Subhadra. I think thanks for the warm welcome, and hi everyone. I'll just start sharing my screen while I speak. So it's always good to be talking to folks who are trying to get into the product management domain and kind of understand how we can help you in that journey. I hope you can see my screen. Subhadra, it's visible, right?
It is visible to me. Participants, is it visible to you all? Yes, yes.
Awesome. So let's begin. Like Subhadra mentioned, I think the focus of our discussion today is going to be for people who are trying to get into the product management role. How do you prepare for an interview and kind of give your best in terms of cracking these interviews? We'll share some, we'll spend like probably 20 to 30 minutes on going through the slides that I've prepared for this discussion, and we'll leave 15-20 minutes at the end. Happy to take any questions if you have. Within the context of this discussion or outside of it, anything is okay, as long as it helps you uncover more about the product management domain and help you make progress in that direction, right? So let's begin. So before we get into the details, a little bit of intro about me so that you know who you are talking to and what kind of experience do I bring to the table? And it is important for you to know that the learning that I'm sharing is something that I've acquired over the last 13 to 14 years. So it's an industry specific view that I bring in as I discuss with you today. So I started my journey back in 2009 as an engineer, worked for 4 years, moved into the product management role after doing an MBA. Have been in Flipkart for the last 7.5, 8 years roughly, and I've done a bunch of different roles in the product management domain, from doing a platform product management role to a growth role to an engagement driven role to today I'm leading products which help sellers who sell on Flipkart kind of grow on the platform and enable the right selection at the right pricing at the right quality for users who come to Flipkart, right? So I've seen the entire kind of spectrum of the e-commerce ecosystem and thereby kind of how product management touches different aspects of the technology industry as well as different other industries which exist in the ecosystem today, right? So whatever I would be discussing today is based on the learnings that I've had across the journey, both by working as a PM and growing as a product leader in the ecosystem, as well as by the virtue of hiring people for my own team and other teams which work at Flipkart, right? So, and the kind of challenges that we face while hiring people and the kind of skill set that people bring to the table while they go through these processes. So my learnings will be based on all of these experiences, which I would be sharing with you today, right? So a little bit of context setting. So how we'll be going about this discussion is we'll spend 5 minutes in just discussing about what is the best way to get into a PM role and what are the different avenues you can go after. But the remaining part of the discussion will focus on the exact specifics of the interview process. What are the discussions which you are going to have when you're interacting with a startup versus a mature company? What are the things that you get evaluated for? We'll also spend some time in doing 1 or 2 practice questions around some of these interview competencies. And at the end, I'll share certain best practices in terms of what you should be doing or what you should not be doing while going through a PM interview process, right? That's going to be the overarching framework for our discussion today. So yeah, I think this question comes a lot, right? Like, and because this is a frequent question which is asked by multiple aspirants, we thought we'll just focus 5 minutes on addressing this bit, right? So I think what you need to understand is, like when you ask yourself as to, can I switch into the PM role? What kind of things do I need to do to be prepared for a PM role? I think the first thing that you need to understand is, as a PM, you need to develop 3 core skill sets. The first one is having strong problem solving skills, because as a PM, what we are trying to do is understand what the problem a user is facing, what objectives a business is particularly going after, what are the problems that my stakeholders are facing, and what is the best, how can I apply my domain knowledge and problem solving skills in understanding these problems better and helping them get solved in the ecosystem, right? So you need to have strong problem solving skills. The second key ingredient for you to be successful as a PM is having great empathy, and great empathy not just for your customers, but everyone that you interact with, like for your internal stakeholders, external stakeholders, for your operations guys, for your marketing professional, for customers, everyone, right? Because each of them is doing his best role in terms of contributing to the success of the product and your company and the ecosystem in general. And each of them come with a different point of view. Sometimes their point of view might be different than yours, but they still come up with they still have a point of view of their own, which is backed by their own understanding of the problem and their experience. And you need to empathize with what they bring to the table, understand what their motivations are, incentives are, align them with your broader long-term objective, and then take decisions which are favorable for your product and the company, right? So that's developing empathy for your customers and stakeholders becomes your second core skill set that you need to kind of succeed as a PM. The third broad ingredient that you need to have as a PM is good storytelling skills, right? I think you would have seen this, the general difference between a PM role versus some other role which you would be performing in your day-to-day job is that more often than not, a product manager is not a people manager. And a lot of people that you help you build the product are actually not reporting to you. You don't have direct authority over them. And so you have to influence them using your soft skills, right? And you interact with a lot of different stakeholders, from strategy to business leadership to designers to engineers to analytics folks to data scientists. So interact with a lot of different stakeholders, none of who report to you and none of who have any kind of a mandate to align with what you are kind of trying to drive and do the same, right? So you have to have very good communication skills, articulate your vision, articulate your view of what you want to build as part of your product building process, and sell it to them so that they come, they understand, they rally after you, and they put in their effort and bandwidth wholeheartedly behind you to make the product succeed, right? So as a PM, you need to develop these three core skill sets in a very well-defined way so that you grow and become better as a PM, right? Now, having said that, there's no restriction as to who can get into the PM role. Anyone can get into a PM role, depending on the background that you come from. You possess certain skill sets, or you excel at some of these skill sets, and you probably need to fine tune on some of the other skill sets or improve in some of the other skill sets. You just need to consciously understand what those skill gaps are, identify it, and then kind of work towards it consciously with help from certain mentoring or other kind of other ways to kind of enhance and close those skill gaps, right? So there's no restriction as to who can get into a PM role. And a person coming from a non-engineering background who doesn't have a software background, who doesn't know how to code, can also get into a PM role. It is not going to be any difficult for him compared to someone who is coming from an engineering background as well. Everyone starts from the same slate, and anyone can kind of become a PM, right? Now, this is a short framework for you to understand how should you get or transition into a PM role. It's a 4-step process in my mind. The first part is how do you develop your PM skills, right? And you can go through multiple ways to kind of develop your PM skills. You can take professional courses, postgraduate courses, or structured courses like the one Upgrade offers, which helps you learn how to be a PM. What are the skill sets that you need to develop as a PM? At the same time, what you have to understand is the skills that you need to succeed as a PM are not very theoretical in nature. You learn on the job. You learn by practice. So the more you do practice, the more engagements that you have, more conversations you have, you start developing better skill sets at it, right? So look for avenues which are practice driven, which help give you the opportunity to share your ideas, get feedback, iterate on them, and all of that, right? So that is why it is also important to seek continuous mentoring as you start developing your skill sets as a PM, and keep networking and keep learning from others' failures, what others' experiences, and so that you don't make the same mistakes over and over again while you get into a PM role, right? So the first part was about developing PM skills. The second part is, once you've developed PM skills, since many of you I saw come with a 6 to 10 years kind of a background experience, right? So you are already having experience in a certain role, right? And you're transitioning to the PM role. Unfortunately, in India, a lot of companies are not open to hiring people who are coming from a different background, right? And it's important for you to then showcase to recruiters, showcase to employers that you are ready for a PM role. One thing, the first step, you've developed your PM skills, but this in the second step to also communicate it to recruiters so that they feel confident that you are ready to be a PM and you can actually contribute in their organization, right? That's where you can also use multiple techniques, right? Either you can use, you can go by having certain professional certificates like having an MBA or having a professional degree, which you get as part of doing certain of these professional courses like in Upgrade, which will help you communicate to recruiters that you are ready for this role. It's also important to build your resume in a very targeted way for a PM role, right? Like a lot of us try to send across the same resume that you have been using for your current role, which doesn't work well for a PM role. A PM resume looks very different. You have to talk about what are your responsibilities, what products you have built, what are the metrics you have moved by building those products, etc. Right? And you have to have a portfolio of your own, which showcases what products you have built. Some of you, if you are coming from a different background, you might not have a strong portfolio, but you can do sample projects to also communicate and showcase your skills and kind of build a portfolio of your own. The third part is finding opportunities, which is where how do you connect with recruiters? How do I get to understand PM opportunities? How do I make them consider me when I float my resume around, right? I think the easiest thing to do when you're trying to get into a PM role is move internally as far as possible. By virtue of your current job and role, I believe you would have developed certain kind of goodness with your stakeholders, right? Who trust you, who believe in your potential. So if it is possible, if it is feasible, try to leverage that network and connections to find opportunities inside your current company and experience the same role within your company. It has two benefits. One, you get to know about the role, you get to experience it firsthand. Also, it will give you the product manager tag on your resume, which will help bring in more recruiters who might get interested in evaluating you for a PM role, right? But there are other opportunities like campus recruitment, and some of these structured courses also offer you recruitment, like opportunities to connect with employers at the end, which gives you structured access to a lot of these PM job openings which exist in the industry, right? And the last part, which we are going to spend the bulk of our time today on, is let's say you got to know about the opportunities, you somehow have signaled to recruiters that you're ready for the role, you get a resume shortlisted, you get shortlisted for an interview process. How do you prepare and be well prepared for cracking the PM interview? That's what we're going to talk about in the next 15-20 minutes, right? So starting off, right, on the interview process. So broadly, if you break down the interview process, you get evaluated on three fronts. Okay, and this is a broad framework. Depending on the company that you're getting evaluated for, things might change slightly here and there. A mature company might be focusing more on some of these aspects versus a startup. As you get hired, if you're interviewing for a junior role, your focus might be more on the competency part of it. If you get hired for a more senior role, the focus of the interview discussions might be more on the leadership aspects of it. But the broad framework still remains the same, right? The priority or the importance of some of these discussions will vary depending on the role and the company, but broadly, these are the things that you get evaluated for. So the first is basically going to be the competency checks, right? Where you get evaluated for things like how are your problem solving skills, how structured you are in your thinking, do you understand how to use data, how good you are at identifying customer specific insights and what his pain points and needs are. So that's the spectrum of the problem solving space, and we'll spend more time on it in the future slides as well. The second competency which you get evaluated for is the product sense or product thinking bit, right? So in terms of how good you are in your customer oriented thinking, can you leverage technology to suggest solutions to the problems that you face in your product? How do you implement it and drive acquisition, retention of users in your product? All of those things you get evaluated for in your product sense and product thinking round. The third competency that you generally get evaluated for is your understanding of technology and systems, right? And here the expectation is not that you should be able to code or you should be very well versed with different engineering nuances, like what are the databases or what are the technologies? Do I need to understand Java, Apache, whatever it is, right? Not like that. The expectation here is that you should be able to converse with an engineer, help communicate your vision of the product and your requirements well to the engineer so that he can go ahead and implement it, but nothing beyond that. And the second part is like, how well can you think long term rather than building something for the short term? And in a happy way, do you think long term and you build capabilities which will help you scale your business in the longer term? Those are things that you get tested for in the tech and systems understanding round. The last part is business understanding, because as a PM, you're not just solving problems for the user and building a product, you're also trying to address and solve problems which are important for your business, right? So it's important for you to understand what ecosystem your company is working in, what is the business strategy, how do you align your product strategy and roadmap with the business strategy, whichever metrics that you track as part of product building process, how do they contribute to your company level business metrics. All of that you need to understand and relate well enough to be able to drive value for the company, right? So the first part of your interview process will kind of evaluate you for competency assessments, various competencies that you need as a product manager, right? The second theme of your interview process is going to be evaluating you on different leadership skills, right? So here, I think it's not about hard skills so much, but it's about your softer skills that you bring to the table. And trust me, as you grow up the ladder on a PM role, the importance of these leadership skills becomes higher and higher. And to be able to succeed, you need to do a very good job at these leadership skills, right? The first and foremost thing, right? Showing ownership and accountability, right? Again, going back to the previous point which I was making earlier, because this is a role where you where you don't have direct authority on your stakeholders, driving impact, driving alignment, driving execution, making sure everyone comes on board with your idea, uh, is going to be very, very tricky and difficult, right? And it is going to need you to own up the problem, fight a lot for resources, fight a lot for bandwidth, fight a lot for alignment, stakeholder alignment, everything. And that will really test your skills in terms of uh, how do you show your ownership skills and accountability and take it forward. And at times when you, the other part to this is when your product succeeds, you have to be ready to give credit to the actual builders of the product, like engineers and designers, which helped you build the product, so that they feel a sense of achievement, and in the future they rally behind you in building the product further. But when the product probably fails, you need to also at times take responsibility for that, without so that you kind of showcase it to that this was a product which I own. Because of whatever reasons it did not succeed, but I am going to figure out ways to make it succeed, right? Showing that accountability and ownership becomes very much important. The second part is the communication storytelling skills. We've talked about this enough, and influencing stakeholders as well. Many times when you engage with stakeholders, you'll have a lot of conflicts, right? Conflicts in terms of understanding of the problem. You might have a different understanding of the problem than they do. You might have a different suggestion on the table than they do. And you might have a different data point to offer than they do, right? There will be a lot of different types of conflicts that you'll come up with and will face in the while building the product. You have to be mindful of these conflicts and figure out ways to resolve these conflicts, and as well as do good for the product, right? Because you have to realize that in the longer term, you'll be working with a lot of the stakeholders, and you cannot actually burn bridges while having these conflicts. You have to make sure that at sometimes you have to disagree and commit and move ahead. At sometimes you'll have to, if you have high conviction on your point of view and opinion, bring in data, show it to your stakeholders and convince them so that that conflict is resolved. But you have to make sure that somehow you get together people to go along with you rather than actually just pushing it aside, right? The last part is change management, right? A lot of times, and in a lot of industries, you are also building products which might make certain people redundant, right? Like, let's say you automate a certain thing which has been going on manually till now. Because of you automating that stuff, a lot of operations people might become redundant, right? So there will be certain resistance in people adopting to the new technology or adopting the product that you've built, right? How do you engage them? How do you restaff them in things where they can add value? How do you manage that change is something that you need to continue working on, right? And also, as you move from working on one product to another product, challenges will be very different. Stakeholders will completely change. Today, you're building a product where you're primarily working with architects and engineers. Tomorrow, you might be working on a product where you might be engaging a lot with marketing folks, and the next product you might be engaging with, let's say, legal and compliance folks, right? So you have to be very open to interacting with different stakeholders, and as you engage with them, they are the domain experts. You have to realize that you don't know everything on the table, right? They know better than you, right? But at the same time, you have to leverage their knowledge, their domain understanding, their skill sets to make the right decisions for the product, right? So the second part of your evaluation process would be on your leadership skills. Now, there will be no round which is interview round or interview discussion which is made to evaluate you on this, but in every discussion, subconsciously, your interviewer is trying to evaluate you on these leadership skills. They might ask you questions which specifically kind of evaluate you on these skills, right? And the third part of the interview process is going to test you on your attitude, right? The attitude on 2-3 things primarily, right? One is, again, how open you are to learning. Like, do you have a learning mindset? Do you have a growth mindset, right? Because again, like I mentioned earlier, many times you'll not be the most knowledgeable in the room, right? And you'll be questioning your ability to influence stakeholders. You'll be questioning, you'll be thinking that I'm unprepared for this discussion, right? You'll get a lot of questions in some meetings where you wouldn't have answers to, right? But you have to be very conscious about it. You have to acknowledge that gap in knowledge, but put in the right amount of effort to be able to learn about it, and come back, revert back with answers later, right? So you'll have always have to stay curious, kind of be open to whatever information comes to you and help it make better decisions for your product. The second thing is openness to feedback, right? Where you get a lot of feedback. Trust me, when you're building a certain product, every single person has an opinion of the product. Everyone will come with a suggestion that the design should look like this, the button should look like this, the flow should not be X, the flow should be Y, right? Everyone in the working with you will have a definite opinion, right? You have to do a better job of collecting these feedback, synthesizing them, and deciding, finally taking the right decision for the product. Eventually it's your decision because you are going to be the owner of the product, right? But at the same time, you have to be flexible. You cannot be very stiff and saying that this is what I've decided, I'm not going to change my opinion, come what may. You have to always be open to newer data, open to feedback, but finally evaluate everything in the larger perspective and take the right decision for the product, right? And the third part is resilience, right? A lot many times you will face dead ends, right? You'll feel that I've done so many things, it is not working out. I don't know what else to do. You might be in a phase where you feel about giving up, but trust me, every single PM goes through that role, right? Goes through that phase, right? So you have to uh, uh, hold yourself. You have to kind of believe in yourself and kind of put in the right effort, continue going behind the problem, so that resilience, so that persistence, and you will eventually make your ends meet, right? So don't worry about when things don't go your way. You have to be patient enough and kind of keep going after it, and eventually you'll find solutions to your or answers to your questions, right? So these are typically the things that you get evaluated for during your interview process, some very consciously, some unconsciously, but internally within the company, when after the interview process, when interviewers get together and do discuss about your candidature and take the final call, they inherently discuss about all of these elements, right? Now coming to the interview process, how it looks in the outside and how you perceive it, right? This is broadly how the process looks like. There are going to be 5 or 6 discussions. If you are getting hired laterally, again, depending on the company, depending on the sector, depending on the stage of the product, things might vary slightly here and there, but broadly this is how it looks, right? The interview process starts with a very basic screening round, which can be done. Some people do it using an exploratory discussion where they call you up, try to understand what your current experience is, what are the projects that you've done as a product manager, what is your inclination toward a product manager role. They might evaluate you on the cultural fit aspect, how well suited you are for the company that you're getting evaluated for, and things like that. And just do some basic checks in your thinking ability, all of that. So the one way of doing it is through an exploratory discussion. The second way is doing a case study, where you're given a problem statement and you're supposed to build a case study around it and submit a report around it, right? So that's the first discussion, and it's mostly a hygiene check. People don't eliminate you there. If you do a very basic, decent job as well, people kind of take you to the next stage, right? Then there are a set of 3-4 discussions which focus on the competencies we talked about in the previous slide: problem solving, product thinking, business understanding, and tech understanding. And if you're getting hired at a very entry level, which is an APM kind of level, associate product manager level, which some companies in India do offer, you get evaluated primarily only for problem solving and product thinking, and not for business and tech understanding. Because if you're just out of an undergrad college, you'll not have a good understanding of business and all of that. So that's not an expectation at all, right? But if you're being hired laterally, let's say with a 5-year, 10-year kind of an experience coming to the ecosystem, then you get evaluated for these as well. At the end, everyone goes through a hiring manager discussion, where generally 2 things happen. He kind of evaluates you for the fitment of the role and the company, the knowledge that you bring to the table, how much of a time do you need to get ramped up and start contributing effectively to your role. And second is, if there are any callouts, if there is any feedback from the previous discussions, hiring managers try to evaluate you slightly on those aspects, so that if there are any doubts in their mind, they can kind of take a call on those aspects during the discussion, right? So this is typically how your interview process kind of looks like. We will spend the next 10-15 minutes going deeper into 2, 3, and 5 here. And while we do that, we'll spend some time in taking one practice question and helping you understand how to go about kind of answering those questions while in an interview situation, right? So problem solving is the first key thing, right? That's the one of the most looked after competencies as a PM, right? Now here, the expectations when you're getting interviewed for a problem solving round is you need to be very structured, right? Like it's not like someone throws you a problem and you suddenly come up with very solutions. Key, I should do X, I should do Y to actually help address that problem. But can you think in a structured way? Can you break down the problem into different sub problems? Form hypotheses and test in terms of why that problem exists in the first place. Validate those hypotheses. Can you look at data, both quantitative and qualitative signals, to either say that the hypothesis was right or the hypothesis was wrong? Uh, how do you do all of that in a very structured and methodical way, and so that you are able to uncover the right problem, right? So that's the expectation in this round. Okay, structured thinking, understanding of data, metrics, ability to form hypothesis and validate them using qualitative and quantitative signals is going to be the primary focus of this discussion. Now, a lot of times people tend to think that I need to give a right answer to this question, right? One thing you have to understand is there's no right answer to a question, and trust me, more often than not, the interview doesn't know even the interview doesn't come up with a thing that I'm looking for XYZ answer from the candidate, right? And he will create situations for you. He will keep saying that no, this is not the problem, this is not the problem, this is not the problem, right? You would be giving 10 different hypotheses, and the interviewer might say that no, these are all invalid hypotheses, right? The intent of those is not to get to a specific answer which the interviewer had in mind, but the intent is to push you to think further, right? How do you use your structured thinking to come up with more hypotheses, so that the intent is you should not give up. You need to put, sometimes you don't know your own abilities, right? Can you think beyond what is obvious in your mind and kind of come up with more hypotheses, right? That's the intent of this discussion. And typically the kind of questions that you ask for, there are 3-4 types. Again, if you're in an entry level, you generally ask questions around 1 or 2, which I've mentioned here. If you're getting interviewed for a more senior role, you probably get a question around the 4th point here, like market entry and stuff, right? So the first type of questions is where you are diagnosing a certain problem. You are given a certain metric, you are told that that metric has been falling. What would you do, right? And the intent here is, can you understand, can you uncover the problem, right? Not about proposing solutions in the first place, but can you understand why this is happening? What is the source of the problem? And how should we go about solving it, right? So that's the first type of problem. The second type of problem is just articulating metrics, right? You would be given a platform like say TikTok or Facebook or Instagram ads or whatever it is, right? People will ask you, can you tell me, if you are a PM here, what would be the metrics that you'd be tracking here? And there are different kind of metrics that you track for a product. There are product metrics, there are business metrics, there are operational metrics, there are technology metrics, and there is a certain structure to your metrics. There are L0 metrics and there are L1 metrics, and there is something called a North Star metric, which is the most important metric that you drive for a product, right? So there are different ways of structuring your metrics. Can you put together the right framework and define the different metrics that you need to track and monitor, and what metrics define the success of your product, right? The third type of question is a guesstimate question, where basically the intent here is, again, the sample question I provided here, right? Can you estimate the annual revenue of Google Play Store? Google Play Store hosts apps that you download and use. If you're using an Android phone, it is making money out of it in certain ways. So if you're given a problem statement to estimate revenue, can you do it? I'm pretty sure you'll not have all the data points, but can you take some proxies? Can you make some assumptions and be able to guess it, right? So that's going to be the intent of this problem. The last problem is a market entry question, where this is more of a strategic question. Should XYZ company be getting into the XYZ ecosystem, market, whatever it is, right? So these are typical kind of questions that you get asked while you're in a product problem solving discussion. So I've taken one problem for as an example. Let's say you are a PM working in a particular platform, let's say on an app. Maybe it is Flipkart, maybe it is Uber, whatever it is. And your leadership, or in the interview scenario, you're asked, I'm noticing that users have started uninstalling their app, and what would you do in this scenario, right? I mean, I'll just pause for 30 seconds. If people have any suggestions, please type it out in the chat window. I'm happy to look, and I'll then go ahead with the slide.
As of now, there is just one question that I see, Is there any technical skill like Java, Python required? Which is from Ashish.
I don't think so. There's no such technical skills which is required. I think as far as, and it's not an expectation, neither in the interview process nor while you're working as a PM, right? It's the intent is, if you can converse, you can communicate to engineers as to what your requirements are, what you expect out of them, that will work. You are not expected to understand the code or anything at all. And trust me, I've not even looked at the code more than 1-2 times in the last 8 years of being in the product management domain, right? Yeah.
Right. And Rohit has also mentioned user research.
Yeah. Yeah, user research becomes important. We'll talk about it in the next slide as we take the talk about the product management.
Now,
Product
I think you can continue. We'll take questions during the Q&A.
Yeah. So yeah, I think as you think about it, right? Like when I ask this question in interview process, a lot of people try to jump into the problem, saying that well, let me stop here. There's a problem. We need to solve it, and we'll do X, Y, Z. We'll probably launch feature X, or maybe people are not satisfied with the experience they had on the app. So they come up with a lot of solutions or suggestions in terms of how we could arrest this decline, right? Or solve this problem in the first place. I think the first thing that you need to do is clarify the problem statement first. Like when you're saying that users have been uninstalling our app, right? Why is it a problem? What is the metric being tracked? Is it the absolute number of users who have been uninstalling the app? Let's say last month 20 users uninstalled, this month 50 users uninstalled. Is that the metric being tracked, or is there an alternate metric, right? Has the percentage of uninstalls actually increased, right? Out of the registered base of users, maybe last month only 5% users uninstalled, and maybe absolute number is increased, but the percentage terms it has remained flat, right? So then is it really a problem? How big is the problem? Is it a 5% drop? Is it a 50% drop? How recent is the phenomenon, right? Has it been happening for a 3-month, 4-month period where it is actually an alarm, or has it happened because of some short-term scenario which could actually correct on its own in the near term, right? And why is it an important problem? Let's say users who have not been engaging on the platform. Let's say they installed the app, they are not being they are not performing any activity on the app. They are actually not making any transactions, and they are uninstalling. Is it really a unhealthy thing for the app, right? You have to question, you have to understand, clarify the problem statement, understand these nuances, and really understand why is it a problem worth working on, right? The second part to answering this question is understanding what is the source of the problem, right? When you say users have been uninstalling, who are these users? Is this problem? And the first thing you need to understand is uninstallation is a symptom. It's not the problem, right? It's just a symptom. People are facing some other problem, or maybe there doesn't exist a problem. Uninstallations is just a symptom, right? So who are the users uninstalling? Is it Android users? Is it iOS users? Is it certain kind of devices who are uninstalling? Is it new users, or is it users who have been using the product for more than a year? They have faced certain experience issues and they are uninstalling. Why are they uninstalling? When are they uninstalling it? Has it always happened in this time of the year? Let's say, for example, before let's say festive season, before Diwali, we noticed that, or before Holi, we noticed that a lot of people uninstall the app, right? So what is the source of the problem? Understand that first and ask more questions. In the interview scenario, the interviewer will help you give data points which will understand you and define the scope of the problem in a better way, right? Once you understand the source of the problem and you've validated that it's an important problem for you to go after, now the next job is to hypothesize as to why that problem exists in the first place, right? Are there market factors at play, right? Let's say COVID, after COVID unlock happened, let's say people have started going out and shopping for themselves. So maybe the traffic which is coming to online shopping apps has reduced, and because of that people don't need online apps anymore, so they've started uninstalling the app. Or are they company level factors? Maybe I've some company decided that I don't want to give more discounts because I want to focus on achieving profitability, and because of lesser discounts, the price of products has gone up, and that's why people have started uninstalling the apps, right? So start hypothesizing at the reasons as to what could be the reasons for users uninstalling your app, right? And that will vary depending on the source of the problem. Let's say in the part 2, you address that a lot of users are uninstalling the app in only the next day after installing the app. Maybe in the past, the company ran a campaign where anyone who installed an app was given 5 rupees as credit to shop on the platform. Now people uninstall the app, use that 5 rupees, and the next day they uninstall the app. That could be another reason, right? So depending on what you uncover as the source of your problem, your hypothesis in terms of why that problem exists could vary, and you need to come up with strong hypothesis as to why that happens, right? Once you do that, the next part is, can I look for supporting data to validate or invalidate my hypothesis, right? And there are input metrics that you can look at. Uninstalling is an after effect, is a later on impact, right? But you can look at, for example, who are these users? Have they not been doing any activity? Have they not been logging into the platform in the last 90 days? If it is existing users who are uninstalling the app, what was the last order? Did they face any delivery delays? I'm talking in the context of an e-commerce app, but did this face any delivery experience issues? Did they get any product which was not promised to them? It was a misshipment, or whatever could be the reasons around that, right? Like, so look at input metrics or qualitative data which help you validate whether your hypotheses were right or wrong, right? So you might actually form 10 different hypotheses, and 5 of them get rejected at this place, and 5 of them kind of continue to remain valid, where you either say that hypothesis was right, or you don't have sufficient data to reject that hypothesis yet, right? And in the last step, you take those hypotheses and suggest solutions, right? Where you come up with experiment proposals or maybe process changes which will help you address that problem, right? So this is more about problem solving, right? We'll talk a bit about product thinking as well. I know we are running out of time. We'll just probably take 5 more minutes in covering this up. So in a product thinking, which is the second largest competency that you get evaluated for in an interview discussion, the same expectations that you have as part of the problem solving round are still there. Along with that, you need to showcase your skills in terms of how well you understand the user base. Who are your users? What are their needs? What are their pain points? The second part is, how do you prioritize different problems, right? Like you might have 5 problems today you need to solve for. What is a more important problem for you to solve, and what is a less important problem? How well do you do this prioritization? And how do you do this prioritization? It's not like my gut says that X problem is more important. Can you take a more structured approach to prioritizing, right? That's where you're getting evaluated for here. And then how do you leverage technology to suggest a solution? Evaluate the risks and trade-offs, right? If I were to launch feature X, obviously I'll achieve certain metrics, but that might actually lead to some other metrics getting impacted, right? So how can I anticipate what could go wrong? Can I anticipate what other metrics could actually fall because of this feature, and be ready to react to it, and kind of align stakeholders about this thing, right? And then the last part is building a GTM, which is a go-to-market strategy. Once I build a certain feature or product, how do I make sure I launch it? When I launch it, I actually drive users to it. My users adopt it. How do I growth hack that product? How do I drive engagement, retention for that product? Those are questions that you need to answer in a product thinking round. And typically you get asked about these questions, right? The most basic type of question that you get asked for is, you'll be asked like, what is your favorite product that you've used in your day-to-day life? And if you are a PM here, how would you build it? What are the next set of improvements that you'll make, right? So when you prepare for an interview process, handpick a few products, be prepared for it, do the background work in terms of building a roadmap for it and being in the PM suit for that product, and come up with go very well prepared to that interview discussion, right? And the second type of question is, you are given a specific product or a feature. Depending on the seniority of the role, you get asked either a feature or a product, and you're asked to design it during the interview scenario, right? And then, like I mentioned, right, this is again a sample question. Let's say someone asks in an interview scenario that design a polling feature for WhatsApp. Now, these are the steps you'd go after, right? Same landscape to going after the problem solving question. First, clarify what is the problem statement. Why do we need to build this feature? What is my objective? Is it to drive engagement? Is it to monetize and get revenue for WhatsApp? Or is it something else? Maybe all my competitor platforms have it, so I'm losing market share because WhatsApp doesn't have it, right? So that's the objective behind building it. So understand what is the objective and what are we trying to achieve by building this feature. The next part is understand, who am I building for? Who are my users? Who are my stakeholders? What are the needs and pain points that I need to solve for? Is it for end users? Is it for businesses? Do I need to enable it in group settings or only in individual chats? Like, think about all of these things as well, right? Who can have access? Let's say only admins can have access to launch a poll, or anyone can have a poll, right? So ask these questions, understand who the user stakeholders are and what could be the different needs and pain points they have in picture, right? Then prioritize, put a landscape. What is the size? Like, if I do this feature, what could be the potential impact? And this ties up to your first thing, right? Depending on what your objective is, I have to prioritize accordingly, right? If I have 5 features that I need to launch or 5 problems that I need to solve, which will, let's say, monetization is my goal, then which of these will make the most amount of impact in terms of that objective, right? So have a framework for you to prioritize. Right? The next step is giving solution proposals. What is the MVP scope? How do I build the right MVP, the minimum viable product, so that I'm actually validating that this is a useful thing to do, right? And then what are the next set of feature enhancements, right? How do I design the user experience? How do I build for the right scale? To engineering, when I'm getting it implemented, I need to tell them how many polls will get launched, how many users will be using polls, all of that, right? So I need to get a understanding of the scale so that engineering can build in that right way. And the last part is success metrics, right? When I build this product, I need to have a view of what are the metrics I'll track to decide whether it was successful or not successful, right? For example, let's say I do the polling feature. Obviously, I have to track how many polls are getting created in a day, how many people are reacting to the poll, all of that. But at the same time, I might expect messages to go down. Today, in the absence of a polling feature, people type messages and communicate what their preference is, right? So I might expect number of messages sent to go down, right? So then have that clarity, have that, anticipate that and communicate, and then have a guardrail metric saying that if messages go down by X%, at the same time usage of polls goes up by Y%, it is probably a healthy state to be in, right? And the last part is GTM. We talked about it. Once you launch this feature, how do you drive awareness, discovery, and adoption for this feature, right? So these are the things that you typically do, right? So just summarizing, right? When you go through an interview process, these are three typical kind of observations that I've had, and these are just do's and don'ts around it. First thing is be problem focused and not be solution focused, right? Don't jump into the solutions. Ask more questions to clarify the problem and what is that you need to solve for, and accordingly respond to the situation. The second is state your assumptions very explicitly. A lot of times we make assumptions and we don't realize it, right? So question your first response, question your biases, and very consciously and clarify your assumptions, right? And ask questions to clarify your assumptions or explicitly state them, right? For example, if you're asked a question key in a product design question that how do you build a library for a kid, right? For a kid, right? We tend to react saying that I'm actually building a offline library. What if it could be an online library, right? So start questioning your assumptions more explicitly and reacting to that, right? The third thing is when you take certain decisions, take more objective decisions. Don't take decisions made based on your gut or without backing it up with different data, because when the interviewer reacts to it and asks you, why did you take that decision? What could be the risks of taking that decision? You'll not be able to justify your decision enough, right? So use a framework as far as possible. It can be a very simple framework, but use it and objectively evaluate your idea and accordingly take a decision, right? So those are my suggestions for you to kind of do well in an interview process. So yeah, this is what I had from the discussion today. I know we stretched beyond time, but yeah, happy to get your questions and address them.
Sure. Firstly, thank you so much, Ram, for such an informative session. It was definitely insightful, and I hope our participants have got understanding about what the interview process looks like, and all the questions that we have taken. So thank you so much, Ram, for that. Okay, let's just go back to the Q&A. But before I just start with the Q&A, we have like somewhere around 5 to 7 minutes left. So participants who wanted to know more about the program, what I have done is I've just posted the link to our program. We have modified the product management program that we have in 2 phases. Okay, so just do one thing, just check and check out the program, have a look at it. If you have any doubts, please get in touch with our academic team, and they will be able to properly explain you, because I'm sure, because in this 1 hour, I will not be able to explain you anything and everything, right? So I think the best people would be, and to have like a one-on-one session, please get in touch with our team. They will give you an understanding about the new change that we have made in our program. Okay, great. I'll just start with the first question, which is from Ashish. I would like to review funnel where we fall.
Yeah, I think that was more in response of the question that I asked, and that's a fair thing as well. You can look at the uninstallation funnel and kind of come up with more analysis, right? And the what I shared as part of my presentation were some indicators that is not a comprehensive solution to the problem. So yeah, think in those directions, and whatever views you can create will be helpful for in the interview discussion.
Right. I think there was a question that was asked regarding programming languages. So Saurabh is asking, MySQL, is it required for product managers?
No, not at all. Like I mentioned, I mean, I think I get this question more often. Neither you're supposed to learn no coding, nor you're supposed to learn any tools like SQL or anything like that to succeed as a PM. Sometimes, like if your company is very new and you don't have analytics to help you with pulling data, you might actually need to write some SQL queries to pull out data and self-serve you for taking product decisions. But it's not an expectation. People will guide you and mentor you to do that well, right? On the same lens, some people might have a question that do I need to know Figma or an Adobe XD or anything or Sketch to be able to develop designs? No, again, any kind of these tools which individual stakeholders use, you are not expected to know. Yeah, if you know it, it's better, but you're not expected to know it.
I think there's this follow-up question. Is it required to have UI UX designing knowledge?
Yeah, I think, see, what you have to understand is product management is a very breadth first role, right? So you're supposed to know a bit of everything, but you are not expected to be a domain expert in it, right? From a UI UX design perspective, as long as you can empathize with the user, understand what his problems are, what is the right experience to build so that his problems are solved for, is enough for you to succeed as a PM. You don't need to know how to implement it using a tool or kind of build a design around it.
Right, great. Thank you so much, Nitish, for that question. I am coming from QA background. Is it possible for transition? Before Ram answers, for I think any background, that you can say, it is possible to make a transition in PM, any background that you're coming from. Okay. So very simple answer would be yes, but yeah, if you would like to elaborate on that.
Yeah, I think I have seen a lot of QAs in my company as well as other companies move into product management. I think as a QA, I think you have a very good hold on technology one. So you understand how technology works. So that makes your life easier to begin with. And second, you also, you marry the product management view with the engineering view, right? You are expected to test out whether the flows with the product manager designs to deliver is working in the way it is expected to know. Right? So you also get a flavor of how product management thinks, right? So you are actually very well set to get into a product management role. So there's nothing preventing you from doing that.
Right. I'm just quickly moving on to the next question. I have created a product called Thomry.com, which is an e-commerce space. I'm working in this product since 8 years. Now I want to transition from entrepreneurship to PM role. Is it possible? So Ram, quickly, if you can answer, because we have a lot of...
I think we get a lot of entrepreneurs who move into product management, and I think the likelihood of succeeding as a PM is higher if you've done an entrepreneurship stint in the past, right? The reasons being, one, as an entrepreneur, you don't get restricted to a particular role. You are doing a lot of different things, right? And as a PM also, you need to do a lot of different things, right? You need to understand business, you need to understand technology, and you should not shy away from doing something which is not in the scope of your role, right? Second, as an entrepreneur, you are owning the problem. You are showing the ownership and accountability skills to drive success and drive value for your company and whatever initiative you're working on, right? And these skill set, the leadership skills that you develop as an entrepreneur kind of come in very handy as you work in a PM role. And we talked about it in my presentation as well. So you'll be in a very good state if you've done an entrepreneurial stint in your past.
Right. Next question is from Srinivas. But by the way, thank you guys for posting your questions. I won't be able to say thank you to everyone because we're short of time. But yeah, next question is from Srinivas. A person with 10 plus years of experience in different technical expertise, when can such a person want to move PM? What's the best approach, APM or PM?
Sure. I think, the way to look at it is not APM versus PM or anything. These are just levels in the hierarchy. Your role doesn't change much, right? The scope of your problem changes. As an APM, you are probably working on a specific feature versus a PM, you are working on a full-fledged product. The other dimension to it is in India or even in companies outside of India, people do hire APMs only from campuses, right? Either undergrad campus, colleges, or whatever it is, right? And lateral hiring happens only for PM. So you should definitely look at a PM role and not an APM role.
Okay, Nitish has a valid question. Since you said that unfortunately in India it's difficult to switch among industries, given my experience in core banking, how do I target career switch amongst finance industries with a high package?
Okay, there are two parts to the question. Let me address it one by one. I think one, how do you switch to product management? There are two ways to go about it. One is move internally, like we talked about, right? And leverage your network to and goodwill you've developed over time to get into a product management role within your company and then switch outside of your company. The second is, if you're trying to switch externally, try to switch into companies in the fintech space only, right? Because fintech is a very domain heavy ecosystem, right? You need to know about the regulatory landscape. You need to know about how financial institutions operate, etc. Right? And the knowledge, the domain knowledge that you've developed over time can come in really handy. So look for opportunities in your similar space, which will give you a good starting point, and you can leverage it to succeed more as a PM, right? Now, how do you start with a better compensation? I think that's a separate question altogether. I don't think we'll be able to do justice in this forum right now.
Not a problem. Thank you so much for that question. Srinivas, which top 3 platforms help to connect and understand around PM industry?
I think there are multiple blog posts and courses that you can go through, right? I think my suggestion would be not just focus on these courses or books or portals or anything. Spend more time, one, in networking with people, learning from their experiences, get a first-hand knowledge of what they do, what are the challenges they face, what did they do to become better as a PM. So do that more consciously and network with and a diverse group of people as far as possible. One. Second, as you prepare for an interview process, also do more mock interviews or focus on actually doing mock interviews and practicing these interviews, right? By only reading about it or doing it yourself doesn't help, right? And that is where also some of these courses, like what Upgrade offers, also gives you that avenue to go through these mock interviews and become better prepared for it, right? So spend time on these two aspects as well, along with reading books, looking at portals, or etc.
Great, thank you. So I think this is what we had. Yeah, I think it's 8:02 and, we would be ending the session here. So firstly, thank you so much, Ram, for coming here and, sharing insights, from the experience that you've gained so far. This definitely means a lot to us. Thank you so much. And thank you, participants, to you as well for attending the session, being right on time and getting your questions solved. It was definitely a very interactive and a very informative session. So thank you so much to you as well. I hope we were able to do justice to your 1 hour and, whatever questions you had in your mind, you have better clarity now. Even if you don't have, not a problem. I'm sure this 1 hour is not going to answer all the questions that you have, but I'm just hoping that we have answered some of the questions that you may have out of the many questions that you have. Okay, so yeah, thank you so much for attending the session. I'm just going to end the poll. I'm just going to end the session with the last poll, that is the exit poll. Participants, please go ahead and cast your votes. Again, an important one for me to understand and analyze how the webinar was for you all. Secondly, I also shared the link to our program. Just check that out as well, because a lot of participants said that they want to enroll into the program, and even a lot of audience said that they're coming from this, can they transition? So yes, you can definitely check out our program. We do have a program which will give you skills required to have that transition and to get into product management. So check that out as well. I've shared the link. And then,
Thanks, Subhada, and thanks everyone for joining in. I think it was nice talking to you folks.
Thank you so much. And also, participants, when you go to the program page, you can share details with us if you want to understand more about the program. Our academic team will get in touch with you and they can answer your questions as well. So, you can feel free to do that as well. Okay, moving back to the poll, we have 82% participation and everybody has said yes, the session was helpful. And what was most value adding was the speaker covering the topic in the easiest way possible. So Ram, this was a little feedback for you. So yeah, thank you so much, participants. It was a great session. And yeah, I hope to see you all in the upcoming sessions that we do have. Bye-bye. Take care.